Hey, this is Kelly from paperbeadrollers.com, and I am outside in my backyard in my container garden getting ready to transplant a few pepper plants. And I have a project for you today that is perfect for spring, because wouldn't you love to have a beautiful sun hat decorated with paper beads for the season? Well, that's our project today. Let's get started. Here are the tools and supplies you'll need for this project. You'll need 2 paper bead rollers, the green 5/64 size and the blue 1/8 size from paperbeadrollers.com. You'll need a pair of scissors, some beading wire. I'm using Bead 7 strand in copper, some beading thread, 2 wide mouth beading needles, and some sewing thread and a sewing needle. Now your thread should probably match your hat. I'm going to use some darker beading thread just so you can see it well on the video. To line the inside of your hat, you'll need a hot glue gun and something to line the inside edge. I'm using bias tape, but you could use ribbon or cloth. You'll need a gardening hat. Now I got this lightweight straw hat at the dollar store last year. It really could use some decoration. The petals use a strip that is triangle shaped and 1 inch wide. I used 4 different colors, but if you want your colors to be evenly spaced around the flower, you'll need to use 5 colors. For the center, I used the 12mm round bead template that is for sale at paperbeadrollers.com. Now I'll also link you to the tutorial on how to make this bead in the video description below. It also has the dimensions and instructions for rolling this bead. For the smaller flowers, there are also 10 petal beads and a center bead for each one. Now the strip for these petals is triangle shaped and it's 1/2 inch wide. I also used about 40 of these beads for the hat band. The center for the flower is the 8mm round bead template that I spoke about earlier. I also made some additional 8mm round beads in off-white and tan to use as accent beads. So this is the same strip size as the center of the smaller flower. You'll also need these micro beads. You'll need to choose a main color for each of the flowers and a color for the band around your hat. I used about 150 beads for the band, but that is obviously going to depend on how large your hat is. You'll need about 20 micro beads for each flower. The link for the microbead template can be found in the description, as well as the video that goes along with that type of bead. The off-white and tan papers are regular 65-pound cardstock, but the blue is a specialty textured paper that has varying thicknesses, and the copper is a metallic laminated paper that is slightly thinner than the 65-pound cardstock. How does this impact my paper beads? Well, the blue petals are slightly larger than the others because the paper is thicker, and the copper petals are slightly thinner than the others because the paper is a little thinner. Now, that doesn't bother me one bit, especially with this project where we're doing flowers. Nature isn't perfectly consistent, so my paper beads don't need to be either. We're going to start by making the hat band. I'm going to use a foam block and a skewer to anchor my thread, but you can use whatever's convenient. Tie a loop in the center of the string and loop it around the skewer. Put one of your big eye beading needles on each end of the thread. Start with 1 microbead. String it on the left thread. Then put the right thread through it the opposite way. Pull each thread tightly, kind of like tying your shoes. You'll secure each section of beads just like this. On the right strand, pick up 3 micro beads. Now I'm using 3 here because they're the exact length that I need for the size of my larger beads. So if you decide to play with these dimensions or do this pattern with some different size beads, you may need more or less than 3. On the left string, you'll pick up 1 petal bead. Now we'll pick up 1 more micro bead with that left strand. So you always do this with the strand that has the petal bead. Then put the right strand through the opposite way and you pull them in tight. And that's how we lock each section in, as I mentioned before. So we're just going to repeat this process, but we're going to flip opposite each time so that the petal bead is on the opposite strand each time. So now we'll pick up 3 micro beads with the left strand. And we'll pick up 1 petal bead with the right strand. Always make sure your petal beads are facing the correct way. For example, my wider end is towards the bottom of the strand. It's frustrating to be pretty far along in a project like this and realize that you messed up the way your beads are facing. Now we'll lock it in with another micro bead. So you're going to continue on with this pattern until you have a band long enough to surround your hat. I'm actually going to leave my band a few inches short because I don't want the 2 ends meeting in the front. I'm going to have a gap, and you'll see I have a little whimsical plan for this. So I'm going to finish this band up and I'll meet you back here and we'll start making the flowers. Let's make our flowers. Now in my project, I made 3 of these. I made 1 larger one and 2 smaller ones, but you do the exact same technique for every flower. We'll start by stringing 10 micro beads. Now we'll turn this into a circle by taking the end of your beading wire back around through all 10 beads. When you pull it tight, and it'll turn into a circle. String the center bead of the flower onto the tail. And now we're going to thread the end of that tail through 5 of the beads. This will ensure that the center bead will sit directly in the center of the circle. So pull it tight, and there you go. It's cute, right? There will be a little bit of play in this, and you're going to need that while you're building the flower. So don't lock that tail in just yet. Do that at the end of the project. Now thread on your first petal and a micro bead. The beading wire goes back down through the top of the petal bead. And see how I'm using the micro bead to kind of lock the petal in place? So make sure you pull it tight. Do you see how the thread for this petal comes out of this 1 micro bead? We're going to take it back into this next micro bead. Now that's going to seat our petal right in between both micro beads. Continue doing this for all 10 petals, tightening up the circle when you need to. I'm going to fast forward the video and I'll show you how to finish off. Now that we've got all 10 petals into place, we're just going to tighten up both of the tails by tucking them each through a few of these beads and then snip them off. This is going to look gorgeous when it's stitched down. Now you can go ahead and make your other flowers and then meet me back here and we'll start decorating the hat. Okay, so you should have your band ready and all of your flowers. Let's start decorating. We'll start by putting on the band. So I'm just going to tie it off right here to tie the band into place on the hat. As I said earlier, I am not having my band meet in the front because I've got a little whimsical plan for how I'm going to make this look. I'm not going to need this thread once I've tacked it down, but for now, it helps keep things in place. Grab your sewing thread and sewing needle. Now I'm going to double over my thread and just tie a knot here in the end. Just tie both ends right together. That gives me a loop, and that's how I'm going to secure my thread to the hat. And make sure that you choose a color of thread that matches your hat so it disappears in the background. I'm going to slide my needle through the back of the hat while holding on to the loop at the end here. If I don't, it'll go right through the straw hat. I'll thread my needle through the first microbead and back through the hat. Now, if I make sure that I run the needle through the loop, that's going to tack it securely in place. I feel like that's a more secure way to tack this down when you're dealing with straw instead of cloth. Now I'm just going to work my way around the band and I'm going to tack it down every few inches. So I'll go ahead and finish this off and see you back when we're ready to put the flowers in place. My plan is to put the large flower here in the center of the hat and then put the other two on either side. I'm going to get all three of them into place and then I'm going to tack down the petals so that they look nice. That way I can be sure to arrange the petals in the most complementary way. So I'm just going to tack each one down around the center ring a couple of times. I may even run the thread through the center bead. I went through and tacked the petals down into positions that I thought looked good, so now it's time to just put on the accent beads. First, I'll go ahead and snip this leftover thread that was holding the hat band in place. Since I tacked the hat band down, I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to do this randomly based on what looks good to me. I'm going to place a blue bead right here. How about a copper flower petal right here? I think that looks pretty nice. And then I guess I'm working my way down here in the front first, so we'll deal with this gap on the hat band. So I have this crazy idea of making the hat band look like the beads are kind of blowing off in the wind. So I'm going to grab a few of these seed beads. I'm going to space them out randomly, even going to move them out along the brim a little bit. Maybe one here. And here. And then if I put some of these larger flower petal ones, and there we go. And it kind of looks like the band is letting loose across the brim. I think it looks good. Now I need to put the accent beads around the top of the flowers too, and bring that kind of flowy look along the top. Since this video is getting pretty long and I think you get the idea, I'll just show you how it turned out and we can move on to the last step. I think it looks wonderful, but there is one more step before it's ready to wear. We are going to add a hat band around the inside of the hat. Now there are two reasons for this. First of all, we have a lot of thread showing around the inside of this hat, and the band will protect it so that it doesn't get pulled and then the beads come off. Second, the hat is always going to be much more comfortable if you have some cloth in there, and it'll even absorb some sweat on a hot day. So I had this bias tape in my sewing cabinet for a while, and I'm going to use it because I always like to reuse things if I possibly can. But you can use ribbon, you can use cloth, you can even do a full hat liner if you'd like. I ironed this flat as I could get it anyway. Now it's important when you use the hot glue that you wipe it on. You don't let it form a row or a hard chunk. If you let it form any kind of a bump, this is going to be a very uncomfortable hat. So just go around the hat very slowly, wiping on the hot glue maybe an inch at a time and sticking the liner down to it. So see where there's just a bit of a seam at the brim of my hat? That's where I'm aiming to put the liner. Take your time and get it right. And when you get to the end, you can trim your liner so that the ends overlap and then just glue them down to each other. It's not the most secure thing. You can always pull it out and replace it if it gets soiled or too sweaty, or if it comes loose, you can just glue it right back down. No big deal. And now the hat is ready. I'm excited to wear this out in the backyard garden and hopefully to the beach this summer. If you want to see more paper bead tutorials and projects, be sure to subscribe to my channel. You can also join us over in the Paper Bead Fanatics group on Facebook, where you can share pictures of your projects with me. See you there! Happy rolling!